The debut of the first edition to Gozilla Media. We talk fantasy. Goz, with you. CBS 6's own Chet Davis. He's not leaving television, everybody. Stop it. Knock it off. If you're watching on our visual side, he has a tie. That face can never leave you in the capital region. He is not leaving TV. Don't let the craziness get to you. And our guy Kyle Ray is here as well. We talk fantasy. Boys, the NFL draft is finished. Chet, I'm going to start with you. The NFL draft is coming on. It was an amazing draft. A lot of fun as always. Fans were there and everything else.
I actually think it was the most entertaining draft I can remember watching. And so it changes over the years where some nights I'm working, some nights I'm not, some nights I'm doing things. This one, I was not only at your event, Gozilla Media at Hooters.
Our event now. We could say our event. Now you guys are a part of it. Yeah.
I'll wait for my commission check. So we were all there, and that was a great event. And we can dive into some of the picks where we all kind of looked at each other. There's one that really comes to mind. But then when I went back to the station, and the screen's right there, and I'm locked in, and I'm seeing all the trades and the picks. Dude, I thought it was actually pure entertainment. And I'm usually one of those, I hype myself up for the draft, and then I'm disappointed with how long it takes. And we felt that with the first few picks because we knew for months, for Trevor Lawrence, years, that he was going to be the top pick. And it's like, we don't need this 10-minute countdown. But once we got rolling, dude, I thought it was a lot of fun action.
Kyle, I saw you flash the three like you were a toss and a catcher change-up sign. Trey Lance is where you want to start with the chaos of the draft.
Me and Chet were sitting there at your event.
Our event. Double.
We were sitting there at the event, and that was the first time in I don't know how long where I actually got up and was stunned at just a move that nobody saw coming. Like it was just Mac Jones, and even we all bought into that hype, even after everyone was like, nothing's certain, blah, blah, blah. But then of all quarterbacks and every player they take Lance. I'm not trying to trash on it, but what are you doing?
They hustled us, man, all the way through. It's Mac Jones. That's why I think us three in particular loved this NFL draft, is because it felt like a fantasy football draft. When you're in your leagues with your buddies and your family members, all summer long, you're like, is so-and-so going to take this person at 2? When's McCaffrey going? When's Barkley going? When's the first quarterback? And that's the fun part about fantasy football. You lie to your friends. You strategize all summer till your draft. And all of a sudden, it's draft day. And no, what? You took so-and-so? The Niners were like a fantasy football manager hustling us the whole way through.
And going off of the line, the thing that I thought about recently, how much did they actually hustle us? Because there was a lot of reports that Zach Wilson was the guy they wanted, right? Was that a hustle to make sure that the Jets took him? I want to know if behind closed doors, it was always Trey Lance. Because giving up as much as they did, that would be a huge risk if it wasn't Trey Lance. Because it was always – Wilson wasn't a surprise. It was always in that conversation of, where is he going to go in the top 3, right? Yeah. And so was it always Lance, and they kind of just made sure the Jets thought that oh, man, we really want Wilson. Too bad you guys are taking him, right? Right?
Well, I think the other cool part that Chet and you and I talked about it as soon as it hit, or as soon as we were leaving, it was Vegas 4 hours before reported that the line swung completely to Lance. What you telling me that what's going, like you said, what's going on behind closed doors that insider knows? It's like, I just made a ton of money for Vegas. I'm going to kick back and now retire in the Bahamas.
And that's why I don't gamble. Vegas is smarter than all of us, and they're way more connected than all of us.
And to think about it, Justin Fields, the guy we haven't mentioned yet, who also is a first-round quarterback, who a team traded up to get. And when you match up maybe the 4 quarterbacks in the first round, well, 5 quarterbacks, right? Because you got Mac Jones in that mix too, with Fields and Wilson and Lawrence and Lance. I look at Justin Fields' situation and Mac Jones, and maybe Fields ended up being the best spot because he's a former number 1 high school player in the country. I know he sat for that year at Georgia, but the Bears are always playing good defense. And Mac Jones, he's in maybe the most unique spot because Belichick never takes a quarterback in the first round. And Cam Newton, if he doesn't get COVID last season, at least he was having a nice start to the fantasy season. I'm excited about Fields and confused about Mac Jones's 2021 statistical performance. Do you guys feel the same way about those two quarterbacks? Kyle, I'll go with you first. How you feeling about Jones and Fields?
I love the situation that Jones is going to. My biggest worry is kind of where it goes with a lot of these quarterbacks. I'm very high on Justin Fields. He was my number 2 quarterback, and it wasn't even close. It was Lawrence and Fields for me. And I always worry about development. I still think that Fields needs a little bit more development. He played in a pro-style offense, but he also developed. He didn't develop. He's always had a running game, and it's the Chicago Bears, a very bland offense. They put everything that they had into the defense, and they did nothing with Trubisky. And no development. Literally, year 1 Trubisky was year 4 Trubisky. It was just the same. So that's the only worry that I have. I'm very happy that it was Fields that or Mac Jones that went to New England and not Fields. I'll tell you that much. But I don't think you can hate the situation that Mac Jones is in. He doesn't have to start right away. They can show him the offense, and that offense, if they stick it to the exact same way that Tom Brady ran it, it's probably going to play almost perfectly into everything that Mac Jones, his entire arsenal. He may be able to get a better deep ball early on, but you can't hate either situation. But I'm going to give the edge to Fields just because I think he's ready, and he has overall the way better weapons over in Chicago.
And if you're wondering why Kyle was rooting against the Patriots and it's your first time listening to We Talk Fantasy, you already see it on our visual side. There's the Bills love. You got the helmet in the top left, too. You will find out the passion that Kyle has for the Bills, the Bills Mafia. Make sure, Bills Mafia fans, whether you're listening in Central New York or up north, hit up Kyle during Bills Sundays. He is your guy to continue to watch and tweet about the Mafia. Chet, what about you, man? Justin Fields, Mac Jones, you feeling kind of similar to Kyle or a little bit different?
Yeah, it's interesting hearing Kyle talk about, because Cam Newton, we kind of all expect that he'll start the season just because Mac Jones might need some work. But those are 2 completely different offenses. Like, those guys are on complete different ends of the spectrum in what they bring to the field. So that I'm really curious about is how that's going to work when they do decide to hand the keys over to Mac Jones. And that whole Patriots offense, especially from a fantasy perspective, I don't know about you guys, but I don't really know how to break it down. I mean, there's so many new pieces, and they're all nice pieces. Like, Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry. I mean, like, I love both of those tight ends. I don't know if I love both of them on the same team, and I don't know who's going to be throwing the ball or if it's going to be the Cam Newton power run game that we saw. So it's like, I think for another year, I'm approaching the Patriots as I don't want any of it.
No.
I just don't want to touch it. For Fields, I think I actually might have the most optimism from a fantasy perspective. But definitely between those two. I think Trevor Lawrence, we know that he's going to start right away, and they have some fun pieces there. I don't know, something about Justin Fields that gets me excited. I think, although I will say, even though I do like that pick and I like his situation, the last time we saw an Ohio State quarterback who had a chip on his shoulder because of draft night, didn't go so well for Dwayne Haskins. So that part had me a little bit worried. But we can all agree it's going to be Jimmy G in San Francisco, right? Like, they're not just going to get rid of Jimmy G. So from a fantasy perspective, I'm not touching Trey Lance. That could be a great dynasty stash if you think he can develop into a Patrick Mahomes kind of player. I'm low on Zach Wilson. I think the Jets made a big mistake. They just pushed the restart button. Like, I was in the camp that I thought Sam Darnold should stay because he's 23 years old. He's been on a dumpster fire team with a horrible coach. Put some weapons around the guy, and now Zach Wilson stepping into the same situation. Who's the number 1 weapon on the Jets? Honest question. Who?
Jamison Crowder, baby.
There you go. Who's the good player? He's a good player. Is he your number 1?
No.
Who's the second-year guy who actually might be?
Denzel Mims and Corey Davis, the former standout of Western Michigan.
That is a nice addition. It's better than what Sam Darnold has. I just think that's just a reset. It's a lateral move where at that position, you either could have gotten amazing draft capital. Look what San Francisco gave up to get to 3. Or even just trade back a little bit. Do something like what the Giants did which with the return of getting a first-round pick for the following year, you could have gotten one of those stud receivers. You could have improved your offensive line. You could have done anything with that high in the draft. And I think he's too pretty. I don't know. Zach Wilson's too good looking. That makes me. It looks like he belongs in a pop band. What's the One Direction? If you told me that guy was in One Direction without football pads, I'd be like, I'll buy it. I believe you.
And my favorite part about all that, Chet, because you're dead on. Their one area that they needed too was offensive line help. And what do? I was stoked. I shouldn't say stoked. That is not the right word. But their first 2 picks were if you're in rebuild mode, were money. Zach Wilson, sure. Then you go Vera Tucker out of USC, really good player. But then you go wide receiver, running back, I can see, and then triple defense. Like, that is not how you protect your new franchise quarterback with the number 2 pick. You don't do that. So unless they're literally going to try to tank this year and go all out offensive line next year, which again, you're then in another year later for quarterback progression, I don't think it makes any sense.
Although they did hit on Mekhi Becton. He seems like he could be the real deal. If he can stay in the field, stay healthy, like that guy's a freaking mammoth of a human being. So at least they have, 2 nice pieces there to help Wilson. But yeah, I just, it's funny. And I was thinking about this as well, where it's fantasy and reality for football. It's trying to figure out quarterbacks, right? And I almost look at it the exact same ways. So these teams that, use so much draft capital to try to find that quarterback. On the fantasy side, it's the same thing where it's like, yeah, of course you want to have Patrick Mahomes or Russell Wilson on your team. I'm in the camp where I like to wait in both situations. I think there's way too much of this, like, I don't want to say wasting a pick, but it's such a gamble. It's a 50-50 if guys end up actually panning out. Like, we know of these 5 quarterbacks, 2 of them are going to be good? Just based on the odds. And so on the fantasy side, I always kick myself because I never go quarterback early. And then when Patrick Mahomes puts 35 points up against me in a matchup, I'm like, why didn't I take Patrick Mahomes? It's the same decision you have to make of, are you willing to wait and get a more middle of the line kind of guy to carry your offense? Or are you going to use some draft capital early to set yourself up?
And the tough part about that is dynasty leagues versus just one single leagues in the keeper leagues. I know that sounds like, well, you'd probably just take the best quarterback. And we'll get to our picks in a second for at least the QB position. But I feel like there could be 3 different cases made for dynasty leagues, keeper leagues in the 2021 season. But Chet, you brought up an interesting point about the quarterbacks. You said 2 names in particular, Jimmy Garoppolo and Sam Darnold. Jimmy Garoppolo has not been traded, and we're taping this on May 6th. Sam Darnold was traded before the draft. And why there's an interesting parallel between those two is that in between that parallel, if you remember the old math classes from high school, there's a quarterback in the middle, and that's Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
Guys, Aaron Rodgers, us 3 in particular at the Hooters event, we're like, it's done. Like, Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Denver Bronco. And as we sit here and tape this about a week and a half later, or maybe a week, got to get a better calendar, he's still a Packer. And Chet, I'll start with you. The fantasy implications of this are massive. We're talking about the league MVP. By the next time we all talk, he may not even be wearing the same uniform.
Remember, starting with me, I didn't hear you said Cheddar Cobb.
Yeah, Chet, go ahead. Yeah, Rodgers might not be a Packer next time we talk.
It's insane, and it's such a horrible job by management. Like, I can understand that people come out and have said that Aaron Rodgers has that personality that when he gets a grudge, it's over. They just mishandled so much of his entire career. It's not just a recent thing. This is a buildup. When it goes back to Jordan Love most recently. And I understand that people love to say, well, when Brett Favre was at the end of his career, they drafted Aaron Rodgers, and look how that worked out. So if that's the same kind of situation, you still have to call your franchise quarterback and keep him in the loop. Did you hear the story in Chicago that the GM actually called Andy Dalton to let him know they were drafting Fields?
Wow, I didn't know that.
Andy Dalton hasn't even played for Chicago yet. But out of respect for a veteran quarterback, they said, hey, man, I know we called you QB1 on Twitter, and this is probably going to be awkward, but we're drafting Justin Fields. That's how you run a team. And when you have one of the most talented quarterbacks that we've seen, one of the best quarterbacks of the 21st century on your team, you do everything to make sure he's happy. And this is one of the simple ones. Like, I'd be mowing that guy's lawn to try to keep him happy. All you had to do was text me like, yo, don't be surprised. we love this kid, Jordan Love. And so they didn't do that. So I can see why Aaron Rodgers is upset. Then on the flip side, I think he's acting like a baby. Like you guys were 1 win away from a Super Bowl. You were right there. So as much as we like to trash the front office and, they don't put weapons around him, which is so true. They have not drafted a first-round weapon for him, right?
Ever. Yep.
So you can make all those arguments. But then, whether you want to give all the credit to Aaron Rodgers or not, they were 1 win away from the Super Bowl, and they almost beat the eventual champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. God's like,
yeah.
But you know what I mean? You can look at that as like the team's winning. Like they've been in the NFC Championship game 2 years in a row. Maybe they were one piece away, and the GM should have drafted a little bit better. But it's a successful franchise, and so I can see both sides. But if he, like you said, guys, if he leaves, it changes everything. Kyle and I, the first reaction we had was, how far does Devontae Adams fall in fantasy? I mean, that guy is a bona fide first-round pick with Aaron Rodgers on his team. With fill-in-the-blank quarterback, how far do you let a guy like Devontae Adams fall? And then everyone around him, obviously, of course, because Aaron Jones will get less touchdowns. I will probably never hear Robert Tunyon's name mispronounced again. All those things will come true.
And on the flip side of that, Jerry Jeudy and Melvin Gordon, if he ends up being a Denver Bronco, and all those guys on that end and everything else. Yeah, and that's the tough part about it. And I think I'll let Kyle hop in on the Aaron Rodgers thing too, that, look, if he leaves, we're talking about, look, Mahomes is probably going to be the number one quarterback, but if you ever want to reach on Aaron Rodgers, I don't think people in your draft would be like, oh, God, you took Rodgers. Like, now all of a sudden, you have a different conversation. You're like, I'm nervous if he's not playing in this. I know he's great, but being late 30s and learning a new offense, it's not as simple as Brady, because a lot of that stuff Brady had set up in Tampa was for him.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Rodgers thing is a circus, is how I like to look at it. I completely see Aaron Rodgers' point. If I was him, I'd want out. I mean, like Chet said, they were literally one piece away from a Super Bowl, and in my opinion, that whole front office completely screwed everything up. You literally needed one more wide receiver that was a consistent threat to really solidify that offense. That's all you needed. Try to make a trade, for God's sakes. I mean, good Lord, do something. But I don't think we're going to see Aaron Rodgers as a Green Bay Packer, whether he retires or whether he gets traded. And Chad and I were talking about it, the draft capital of Devontae, I still think he's probably late second, at early third at the absolute worst. But think about a guy like Aaron Jones, one of the best running backs we've seen in 2 consecutive years. Where does he go? Like, there's going to be that whole saga is going to mix so many things up, and you're literally going to have to plan, at least in this current time, as we're 3.5 months away from draft time, 2 scenarios, with Aaron Rodgers and without, because there are 3 top tier positions right there in Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, and Aaron Rodgers. And if Aaron Rodgers is in on that, all 3 of them drop.
I hope this isn't a Zeke Elliott situation from a few years ago. And if you guys remember what I'm talking about, I know Kyle does with his reaction. Yeah, like, we didn't know the suspension for Zeke. And the reason I bring up Zeke is because a lot of people are pointing to the day June 1st is potentially when Rodgers can go. But the reason I set it up with Garoppolo and Darnold is we all know this. It's far more likely for those quarterback trades to happen pre-draft than post-draft, because the rosters are set. I think the big-time post-draft quarterback trade we had was Philadelphia, right, years ago when they made Carson Wentz the starter. I think Bradford was on the move like before week 1 to Minnesota or some variation of that. It's very rare that we have the roster set and they move somebody, because you don't want them to get hurt in preseason or even at camp and you get no value out of them. I'll ask you guys this question, and I kind of teased it already about dynasty leagues, keeper leagues, and your actual draft. Am I off base with that? Like, would you guys take someone in a dynasty league over a 2021 quarterback? So I think we're talking about, again, Lawrence, Fields, Wilson, Jones, Lance. Would it just be one guy you'd take in all 3 leagues, or would you kind of flip-flop projecting already to the 2021 season? And if you want, I'll go first because I already got my answer.
Yeah.
I'm going Trevor Lawrence both. It's like if I had the number 1 pick in anything and Lawrence was the number 1 pick, I'll take Lawrence because I think he's the best quarterback. I think Trevor Lawrence is a generational talent, and I know that's almost become cliche how often we've heard that. But you can seriously make the case, at least in our lifetime and maybe further back, He's the greatest quarterback prospect ever. Ever. Like, better than Peyton Manning, better than John Elway. Because remember Peyton Manning's doc? He couldn't win a bowl game. Not the SEC, not the national championship, a bowl game. John Elway barely had a winning record at Stanford. But Trevor Lawrence's critique was, he got COVID? Like, that's not a critique. Cut his hair? Like, we got nothing on Trevor Lawrence. He's arguably the greatest quarterback prospect of all time. So if you told me I have to pick somebody for a dynasty league, a keeper league, or the 2021 season, give me Trevor Lawrence all day, no doubt.
Oh, that's hard to disagree with the points you just made. Urban Meyer has me a little bit worried, just because we've seen that fail so many times when college coaches try to make that transition. And he's in his own category in and of himself, coming out of retirement and how many times he's walked away because of health issues and all that.
Air quotes from Kyle, which needed to be noted.
What's that?
Health issues.
Yeah.
Kyle's doing air quotes for those who can't see it on the audio version.
Now, the second fandom you're going to learn of Kyle is that Michigan State. He bleeds green. That means he hates Ohio State. I would have to go 1A, Trevor Lawrence, 1B. Ooh, man. You see, the thing about Trey Lance is, especially what we've seen from Shanahan running that offense, is the running backs thrive. Like, we haven't seen a quarterback thrive I guess when he was with Matt Ryan, right? I guess that was the MVP season. But with his offense that he has in San Francisco, it's been that carousel of running backs that we've seen just dominate. Anybody they plug in, they seem to have a 100-yard game and 3 touchdowns. So I'd put Justin Fields as 1B, as a guy that I would be, for dynasty purposes, I think he could be the real deal.
So the only point that I'm going to throw out there for Trevor where I wouldn't have him on a dynasty is something tells me Trevor Lawrence is going to go high.
Just to clarify, because Kyle and I play in a dynasty league where you draft somebody, that's what it costs you in the next year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's that's a great point, Kyle, because people are going to reach. So we look for the biggest type of value, like from last year. Best value was a guy like James Robinson, because no one drafted him. He was actually most likely picked up on a waiver. So the lower or later you get somebody, the more valuable. Another example, 2 years ago, someone took a flyer on Lamar Jackson in the 14th round.
Yep.
And he wasn't even a starter. And so that guy held on, and now it progresses each year. So we're going to reference this a lot because Kyle are in this dynasty league. So just to explain it progresses every year. So if you get a guy in the 14th, next year he's your 13th round pick. Keep him again, he's your 12th round, and up and up and up. So what Kyle is saying is, if Trevor Lawrence gets drafted in the 7th round, is that really good value because you can still get a really good quarterback in the 7th round? That's what he's saying. So with the dynasty leagues that you're talking about is like, you kind of do like a full, I guess,
a reset, basically. Like, hey, if you finished in last place, you get the number 1 pick for the new reset of the rookies. Yeah.
Reset of the rookies. And then, if we're doing that, I think, pretty unanimous that, you're going to get immediate value with Trevor Lawrence. He's got good weapons around him. We're going to dive into the running backs in a little bit, but Robinson combined with Travis Etienne, DJ Chark, good speedster. They still could use some help with some other weapons, but overall, it's a pretty good situation to walk into offensively.
Well, you left the segue right over the plate for me. I can't pass on it. Like the good host that I am, you leave that segue, I pounce on it. Let's go to running backs. And Chet, before you connected with us, Baby Rex had crashed the podcast, and Kyle and I were chatting quickly about running backs. It only took me and Kyle about 10 seconds to both have the same take. And Kyle, I'm going to let you go first just because you and I kind of are thinking the same way. We are not excited at all about these running backs. And I know your team, Chet's the Steelers, so maybe there's a guy there. But Kyle, I think your answer is going to be the same as mine. The excitement that usually is there with rookie running backs like we've seen in the past years with Saquon and McCaffrey and Zeke, that is not the 2021 class, it seems.
Oh Lord, the excitement that we had at the 2020 post draft was unreal. J.K. Dobbins, CEH, it was unreal. And this year, I literally looked at these like, Najee is a nice player. How's he going to fit in Pittsburgh? Not really sure. That offense has a lot of question marks. Travis Etienne, I loved him. I wanted him very badly in Buffalo. Again, you're walking into Jacksonville. What are you going to expect, especially next year? There's one running back outside of those two that I like the situation they're in, I still would not pick them anywhere near in the first 10 rounds. And it's Michael Carter going to the Jets because they still don't have a solidified running back position. And he was a very solid running back. People slept on those two North Carolina, Michael Carter and Javonte Williams, slept on them big time. And I'm guilty of that too because I knew nothing about them. But if the Jets don't jet themselves and actually build and solidify that, Michael Carter might be a really nice add for a late round in a keeper league or a dynasty league. Outside of that, there is not a thing on that chart that I'm touching.
Oh, there's so much I want to break down on that. Is that a saying if they jet themselves?
No, adjective or a verb, right? Yeah.
I might need to use that in my highlights from now on. And New York jets themselves. Oh, it's great. And I love that you're woke now, Kyle. People slept on him. I did too, but now I'm aware. These guys
Hashtag woke.
These guys are good. No, I agree. I think Najee Harris could be a really nice piece. I think Goz might have mentioned it earlier in the show. What's that offense going to look like with Big Ben? Every year that goes by, I'm just waiting. I feel like the wheels have fallen off, and he's just kind of like it's on his hubcap right now, just kind of spinning his brims. So we don't know what the offense is going to be like. I do tend to agree with the narrative that it wasn't the running back. That wasn't the problem last year. Even though I wasn't very high on James Conner and, Benny Snell kind of is what he is. He has one gear. But there weren't openings. Like, you got to have a strong offensive line. We just saw Alejandro Villanueva, I think going to the Ravens, which going to an AFC North rival, not great. There's going to be a lot of question marks on the offensive line. And as great as Najee looked in college, if there's not openings in the NFL, you're not going to do much. The ETN one, dude, why? He's great. And if they
covered him in high school, Chet, for those who don't know. Didn't you cover him in high school? Yeah.
The pride of Jennings, Louisiana. To this day, I've been covering high school football for, I think, 7 to 8 years now. By far the best athlete I've ever seen in person. He was the guy, because people don't know for high school football, reporters and photographers, you go to 3 to 4 games a night. You always start, Kyle, you're petting a dog.
Yeah.
I thought you were really excited about ETN.
I might run that back for the highlight version of Kyle getting too excited about Travis Etienne.
Wow. Tell me more about ETN. Yeah. He was the guy you
left-handed
go to first because he would get an 80-yard touchdown every time. I guess they utilize him this year like a Percy Harvin because he is a good pass-catching running back. But James Robinson was great last year. The biggest surprise of the rookies last year, undrafted, I think he had 1,500 scrimmage yards. So, he's not going anywhere. I say hope not because he was fantastic. So now you just worry about usage from a fantasy perspective, especially as a rookie for ETN. Maybe I guess the ceiling for him in year one would be like a James White when he was utilized in New England, where you're hoping that he gets 5 to 6 catches. You're not going to probably get a lot of goal line work unless they get creative. So those kind of things you have to think about when you're drafting a guy like ETN. For me, the running back, when we start digging in, because I was in the same boat, guys. When I looked and I saw after those two, I was like, I'm with Kyle. I don't even know some of these guys. And so I looked for kind of the best situation. Trey Sermon kind of popped up, which, Kyle, going back to one of our DMs, is this the Trey Sermon that we think he is?
So I was thinking of the other guy. There were 2 running backs last year at Ohio State, Trey Sermon and the other. I have his name.
Trey Sermon's the dude. That dude had some games at Ohio State.
The only problem with Trey Sermon is he is slow. He has no giddy up.
No breakaway speed.
Nope.
I feel like he does. That is a crowded running back room because I had forgotten that Wayne Gallman is now a Niner.
They have 7 running backs on their roster, if I'm not mistaken, right now currently.
And another one of the guys that I covered in high school, Elijah Mitchell. So that's what always is so interesting about the draft is you get high on these prospects, and then they go to a place where you're like, I don't see how that's going to be fantasy relevant, especially right away. So, but I still like that 49ers offense. We've seen how injury prone Raheem Mostert is. Jeff Wilson had some nice moments last year as well. But if he can get that number 3 job, maybe Trey Sermon's a guy you take a flyer on super late. Dynasty as well. The guy that I'm going to say that has to be drafted in every league, mandatory, is Chuba Hubbard. And not only because his name is Chuba Hubbard, but he is the backup potentially to Christian McCaffrey. And so, in all reality, everyone needs to handcuff McCaffrey, especially what happened last year. And we saw how great Mike Davis was. And that was, if you had waiver pick number 1, you had Mike Davis for the majority of the season. But, I mean, come on. Chuba Hubbard, there's so many great team names that can come out of that, and he will be a great handcuff.
He's trying to claim his name is Chuba Hubbard. If you spell it like that, it's going to be Chuba Hubbard forever. That's on you. You decided to spell it like that. If you want to be Chuba, then spell it like Chuba, not Chuba. Yeah, that's on you trying to be a great running back. I'm trying to, by the way, this is a way off because you guys covered the running backs great. I don't have much to add except this. I'm rooting for Stevie Scott for the New Orleans Saints. So you have Kamara, Latavius Murray, and Stevie Scott. Remember that Indiana team was a big surprise of the college football season last year. And I bring up Stevie Scott because and Chet already knows this, Latavius Murray and Stevie Scott are both Syracuse residents. So it's pretty cool to have 2 guys from the same area in the same backfield in the NFL. And that whole Saints offense is going to be a complete mess. Like, do we call Taysom Hill a running back? Is he going to be listed as a quarterback? Is Winston going to be there? That's for another podcast. But I hope he makes a roster and does something fun. You mentioned handcuffs about Kamara. I don't want to root for an injury, but I think it'd just be fun to see if he actually gets on the field and does something. I know we spent – go ahead, Chet. Yeah.
One more name thing because we're talking about the Chuba. The other thing about Travis Etienne, and I think I've told this to maybe both of you guys, in high school he was Travis Achan. That is a Cajun last name. And so we always called him Travis Achan. And his hometown – so like when I was in Lafayette, Louisiana, Shreveport is closer to where his high school was. So they covered him, exclusively, like that was their guy. And that sports director was like, Chet, I'm positive it's Achan. And then he goes to Clemson and he gets called Etienne. I would not be surprised if this is going to be another Tyrod Taylor situation where later in his career he's going to make guys by name's actually Achan.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Johnny Manziel. Yeah, they're Joe Theismann. Oh, yeah. This is a classic add to that list. Go ahead, Kyle.
Hey, guys, before we move off from the running backs, too, the only other thing that's just been kind of eating at me, because I think I talked to Chet a little bit. I was like, will the Jaguars mess this up and draft a running back in round 1? What? And how they did it, I don't know. What happens to Robinson? What do you do if you have him as a keeper? Do you still keep him?
Oh, yeah. That's a great point. How about we play the game of where would Robinson have been drafted non-dynasty? Where would Robinson have been drafted pre-draft?
Ooh, God.
Probably top 3.
I was going to go round 1, maybe top 7 at the worst. 7th is the worst.
Yeah, I was going to say top 3 round guaranteed.
Oh, yeah. No doubt. I was going to say, if you got him in the 4th round, that'd be an unbelievable steal. He's got to be a top 3 round pick if he wasn't drafted ETN by the Jags.
I would say probably be going late 1st, early 2nd would probably be like if you did the ADP, because you're buying into the Trevor Lawrence hype, which that's a little bit scary to do. But, he was able to produce the way he did with a revolving door at quarterback, and obviously you're hoping that you're moving in the right direction. So now, post Travis Etienne, I think probably closer to that 3rd, 4th round, right?
I was gonna say 5th, 6th, just because I don't know.
With the value on running backs, though,
it's fair, but with one team, I don't know who it's gonna be. Like that's my problem. Is like, does Urban Meyer take 2 huge offensive weapons in the 1st round and sit that 1st round talent? I don't think Urban will do that. He is a cocky SOB.
I think they're both going to be on the field at the same time a lot. And that's why I brought up a Percy Harvin. I think they're going to have to get creative with Travis Etienne. But, it could blow up in your face. Mm-hmm. If you go high, you could easily be rewarded, or it could be by week 5, you're like, what was I thinking getting a guy like James Robinson?
The Urban Meyer thing is such a fantastic point, not because we know obviously who the coach is and everything, but it's more about the college mindset. And what I mean by that is that if he's not your guy, I don't want him. Like that's how college coaches work. If I didn't recruit him, he's not on my team. Bye, transfer, see ya. No disrespect to Robinson, but that's what it is. Like, we don't think you're that good. Why? Because I didn't take you. I didn't sign you. I didn't recruit you. That's as simple as that. Like, now maybe he'll prove something, and that's got to be an ego thing Urban Meyer's got to get over. But I don't think a guy who's arguably one of the great top 5 college coaches of all time is going to flip the ego. That's going to be the hardest thing for Urban Meyer. And I wish I could give me a Hard Knocks life with the Jags. Give me cameras there. And I don't want it uncut all day, 24/7 Big Brother style feed. By the way, watch Big Brother on CBS 6, the home of Chet Davis.
There we go.
One more position I want to cover here. We're going to pass on the tight ends because that's a mess always in fantasy football. The wide receivers. Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts has potential to be truly remarkable. He really does. He is so good at Florida, especially those September games. I remember going from Pitts, like that game especially, I think it was Vandy, maybe it was in September, where I was like, hey, this tight end for Florida is pretty good. And as the game progressed, I'm like, wow, he's really good. And then I'm writing on my phone, I think a tight end can win the Heisman. That's how quick you just knew from that guy on the field. Go ahead, Chet. Yeah.
Is it time? Oh, I'm not actually buttoning my – I'm not raising my hand. No, like that. I'm just buttoning my shirt. So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
But no, I do have is it time for a beer bet?
Ooh, okay. What do we got?
They don't want this action. I'm going to say Kyle Pitts finishes as a top – ooh, now that I'm saying it. I'm going to say he's going to be a top 4 tight end in fantasy this year.
Oh, my God.
I
literally had 3 up. I had 3 right here. So I was going to say 3. So it looks like Chet and I are on the same team. Kyle thinks he's outside of the top 5.
Yep.
Ring it up. Beer bet.
Yep. I think he'll fall in around 7.
It's possible. I mean, rookie tight ends tend to struggle. It's rare for them to succeed right away.
I just love the top tier tight ends. I mean, don't forget your
top.
No,
trust me, that was going in my head. You know, we have Kelsey, we have Kittle, we have Waller, and I think that Pitts could be better than Andrews.
And Ertz, by the way, is situation still undecided in Philly.
Does he still play football?
Don't forget what happened last time that New England had 2 very strong tight ends. Those 2 tight ends.
Someone died? Well, that's rude.
Chet, too soon. Don't worry, we're now Gozilla Media, so there's no problem. You can say whatever you want on Gozilla Media. I'll take it up with the president of the company. All right, we'll move on to wide receivers so we can have another version of this show. So what do we think about this year's wide receiver class? For me, going through it, I know you and I, Kyle and Chet, we've done these before. These are what I'd love to call the pride picks, where when it's August and maybe early September and your drafts roll around and you get one of these right, these are going to be the players for your fantasy teams you root for the hardest, and you hit in the group text message, I told you so-and-so was going to drive my team. We're talking about that 80-yard touchdown that gives you a double-digit performance. We're talking about that Monday night comeback where a rookie's a beast. You guys feeling the same way about this rookie class of wide receivers where truly, especially in these later rounds, you take flyers on them or you get them at value at the certain spot, make or break playoffs and championship quality performances out of these guys?
1,000%. 1,000%. This is just like last year's where there is so much talent across the board. You know, there's the guys that we talked about and we saw in the mock drafts for months and months and months. And those are super intriguing because kind of what we talked about before is how high are people going to reach? You know, like how high does Jamar Chase go in a fantasy draft? And that's where you have to kind of figure out, like, there might be some growing pains. Like Jamar Chase didn't go to the best situation for him to get a lot of targets right away. And his quarterback, how many weeks is Burrow going to be out for the start of this season? So like all those things, where you really make your money, and I think what you're referencing, Goz, is when you find those middle round wide receivers or second round wide receivers that you get super late in your fantasy draft, who by the end of the season are consistent Justin Jefferson type guys.
You loved Justin Jefferson last year, Chet, by the way, too. So kudos to you. Kyle, go right ahead, man. Yeah.
I've got a couple, like to Chet's point. I think you can look at some of the top wide receivers like Waddle, Smith, even potentially Tooney. I think
Boo!
I think
I'll continue, but I think he's going to be trash.
Tooney?
This year. Oh, yeah.
I think they have potential. I'm not going to say they are. But there's one guy in particular that I really like that's going to be a sleeper in a lot of drafts.
Can I guess? Guess? Did he play in the Big Ten?
No.
Oh, okay, continue.
Josh Palmer, going to the Chargers out of Tennessee. Big body. He's not the fastest in the world, but you have Herbert coming along, who I'm assuming that this offense is going to fly this year. Don't sleep on high-powered offense like that. Herbert went nuts last year. What's he going to do year 2 with a whole, with Eckler healthy, with hopefully a healthy offensive line, with a full year as the quarterback with under center? Do I know if Josh Palmer's going to start? No, but I'll tell you what, if Josh Palmer's there at round 10 for me, I'm probably going to take a shot at him.
Oh,
We
man.
went to high school with a kid named Josh Palmer. I can't get over that.
Actual facts.
And we went to a small high school, so you keep saying Josh Palmer, I just keep seeing his face.
Why do you think?
How many bags of Doritos would you give to a guy like Justin Herbert this year?
I think he's worth probably 4. He
4 bags.
He quadrupled his value.
He's like Dogecoin. He's just to the moon.
Chad, for those who don't know what the Dorito reference is, please remind some of the new listeners of the Dorito bet.
Yeah, so I made a trade in my Dynasty League, which that's very important to note, that I had Dak Prescott, he breaks his leg, and then I forget who my in-between, I think I had Tannehill, who was great for the middle part of the season, but I wanted a more consistent guy, and I also was thinking about the Dynasty implications. So I traded Justin Herbert for James Conner, and Kyle's reaction was that it was a bad trade and that Justin Herbert wasn't even worth a bag of Doritos.
No, I said if you were going to give up James Conner for a bag of Doritos.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay. Giving up James Conner for a bag of Doritos. The most delicious chips on the planet.
Never specified if it was Cool Ranch or 3D Doritos, just flat out Doritos.
No, we definitely said Cool Ranch because they
okay.
weren't quite the Buffalo ones that the Doritos have out there, which are phenomenal.
I don't know if any nerd out there would keep a stat like this, but I'm positive. And you know what? I don't even want to make a bet on this because there's a lot of math that you'd have to do. This wide receiver class rookie will be the highest scoring rookie wide receiver class in the history of fantasy football. Like I'm very confident in that. I don't want to do that math and match it up against somebody else, but that's how much impact with the passing game and being on bad teams that these wide receivers can have. Also, it's just sheer numbers. Like the amount of wide receivers that are actually taken in the draft helps out that stat as well. I'm going to make up 10. Yeah, it's insane.
10 in the first 2 rounds. Get out of here.
An adjective I'm going to use, badassery, is how I'm going to describe what the wide receivers are going to be because now you can rock single digits in the NFL. Jamar Chase is going to be the first player in the history of the Cincinnati Bengals to wear number 1. No one's ever done it. He's the first ever one in Bengals history. I saw last that Devontae Smith was going to wear 6 for the Eagles I'd seen out there. Maybe Jalen Waddle does a single digit. The fact that we got single digits, and this is more like the NCAA football games coming to life in the NFL, especially if you're a young fan, like teenagers, even like in college, hell, even us, like we're now into our 30s, like to see these impact players with very noticeable, marketable numbers that kids will want to wear in Pop Warner in high school. I love all that stuff. And if I had to pick one, oh boy, like I feel like Waddle's the answer. And not because of Burrow. Burrow's hurt, so I don't feel as confident in Jamar Chase. Devontae Smith, so good. Heisman Trophy winner. Us three have had the debates about whether or not he's the all-time great college football wide receiver. I think the Giants and Daniel Jones have too many doubts there. So Waddle's like the last man standing. I love the Palmer pick. It made a ton of sense that Kyle was talking about. But I think because of default, Jalen Waddle's in the best spot in Miami. I mean, he's probably going to be asked to do the most in that situation. So I'd go Waddle if I had to pick at least 2021. Who do I think scores the most fantasy points out of that bunch?
I'll go Devontae Smith. I think Smith will be because it's a similar situation. I mean, their wide receiver room is not great in Philadelphia, and it also very similar. This was kind of a theme of the draft. Reunited with a college quarterback. Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith have already played together, so they already have that repertoire. But yeah, I think Smith's going to step right in. I mean, who do they have?
Rager.
They have the rookie Rager, who didn't do squat last year. But they had a guy who I'm drawing a blank on his name. He was literally good for like 3 games.
Yeah.
Is Nelson Aguilar back?
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's not coming back. Kyle, you know what I'm thinking of?
I can't remember his name, but I was so upset.
He was like a practice squad guy. Came and then like had 3 good weeks and then disappeared again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think Jalen Hurts might be one of the most intriguing guys, not just for quarterbacks in the entire fantasy world. I mean, that guy has the potential to be the number one fantasy player this year for quarterbacks. He literally has it. Like, if you have the ability to run and throw in an offense that's going to be pass heavy and trailing probably a lot, like there's the potential for him to put up huge numbers, and Devontae Smith would be rewarded with a lot of it.
So for the future of We Talk Fantasy, by the way, here, we're going to be on like a little bit of a pause. Basically, what's going to happen next, how I'm thinking this, unless you guys have different ideas, the next time breaking news happens in the NFL, I'm going to DM both of you and be like, emergency pod session right now. We may not have one till June or July because not a lot's going to happen. No. Nothing happened yet. No.
My phone.
But in a fantasy-themed podcast, we're probably going to pick up the episodes more so when we get into August and we get to draft season. I got some really cool ideas for a Gozilla Media fantasy league this year I'm going to get to as the summer progresses. So that's kind of going to be that schedule. More stuff will be coming in the fall and the winter for us. I just want to give one more shout-out before we go. Chet, you got a certain sibling who is crushing it. I want to give love to because he's been helping us out. He's been helping Gozilla Media out, all that good stuff. Give a little love to your brother.
I'm going to give love to Kyle trying to figure out how the camera works. So my brother, he's pointing at the logo, Gozilla Media. Also, I got the shirt apparel. My brother is, I guess you can call him an artist. You can follow him on Instagram at Don't Know Squatch, like you're looking for Sasquatch. You have the pull that out, Kyle.
Yeah, show that. Your brother.
Is the cover? Oh no, yeah, baby.
Yeah, my brother actually illustrated a graphic novel back in the day. Yeah, there he is.
Man. Your brother is no doubt an artist, man. People are paying for his work. He is making some dough because he's that talented, man. He crushes it.
No, he is. He's also a new father, so he's got big things going on as well. But give him a follow, give him some support. He does some like artist competition kind of thing stuff. So he's got a lot of cool stuff that he posts. Before we end up, I hope we're not on a time constraint.
No, we're good.
That I want to be on record as saying, well, there's one of them. I'm going to make my one bold pick, and another guy to keep an eye on. I'm going to keep the LSU train rolling. How about Terrace Marshall out of LSU? I nailed it with Justin Jefferson. Go Tigers. Robbie Anderson's still there. He was a nice player for the Panthers. DJ Moore. It's putting a lot of stock into Sam Darnold. But Terrace Marshall, just like the rest of those LSU guys, can flat out fly. Keep an eye on him. And then another one, how about Cornell Powell? Sammy Watkins is gone in Kansas City. You have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. Could he eventually become the number 2 in Kansas City during his rookie year? Mecole Hardman's still there. But he was the 5th rounder out of Clemson. Keep an eye on Cornell Powell.
Chet, what a call on Terrace Marshall.
There's actually no N in his name, which is crazy.
Boo, he plays for the Panthers.
I thought it was Terrence this whole time. Yeah, Terrace Marshall.
It's long. Go ahead, Kyle.
Like I said, I like Palmer. The one guy I'm really rooting for because I've been such a fan of him ever since the Big Ten, and he just went to a bad team. Dude, I love Rondell Moore.
Yeah.
It sucks that because I think he has potential to fill in for Larry Fitzgerald in that role. I just am not a fan of Kyler Murray throwing the ball, but dude, I am rooting hard for Rondell Moore.
I had him on my list because that is a nice situation. When you have D-Hop on the other side, he gets a lot of the attention. If he can get the over the middle of the stuff with that kind of speed.
Yep.
But like you said, how many completions does he get per game?
That's it, man. Like, I loved Rondell Moore at Purdue. There were times, seriously, where he was the best player in the country in 2019. Now, 2020 was a mess. Oh, my God.
It was unreal.
Right. And I feel like the Arizona Cardinals, this is way early in the season, and this can completely change. But if someone said, all right, guys, Super Bowl pick right now in May, I would tell you Bills Cardinals because that's how much the Cardinals have done this offseason. Hopkins and Rondell Moore and Murray and J.J. Watt, they've become the Buccaneers of the desert. I love that. I just don't know fantasy-wise what he's going to do. He might be better in like 2022, Rondell Moore. He's so talented, man. Yeah,
I could totally see him being that Christian Kirk guy where you start him and you only get 3 catches for 20 yards. You bench him, he gets 3 catches for 120 and a touchdown. And you're like,
yes,
that's going to be he has the big play potential that you love. You just don't know which week it's going to hit.
At WeTalk_fantasy on Twitter, at Tom Goz, TOMGOZZ, at RayRay8134, at Chet Davis, CBS6. Any final words before we connect at some point later on this spring and summer when big news happens in the NFL, guys?
We will
see you in Verdansk.
See you in Verdansk. We will be talking to you probably in the next couple weeks because at some point Aaron Rodgers is going to announce his retirement or trade.
He's not going to retire, is he?
Jeopardy.
If he's not traded, he said if he's not traded, he's going to retire. We'll see
And
what happens.
don't forget, by the way, if you're listening on our audio side, please leave a review right there underneath. I think one of the cool things we're going to do this upcoming summer is that if you leave a review with a fantasy question, we will answer that. It's guaranteed. Guaranteed. You leave a question on our Apple side, we will answer it on the podcast. Hopefully it'll involve fantasy football. Don't forget to subscribe as well, so when new episodes go up on the video side on our YouTube channel, Gozilla Media, it goes right to your phone. All right, guys. We at some point will talk again soon. Until then, get ready. The draft's not too far away.
Start your mocks right now, boys.
Mock.